Hello and welcome. I'm Jay.
And I'm Robbie.
You join us for episode 34 of Generations Apart. And on today's episode, we're talking about action cameras and on-the-go content creation, specifically the new-ish Insta360 Go3 and Final Cut for iPad Pro. I'll be sharing my experiences of using these tools to create video content during a recent trip, as well as some of the other tools that went on the journey with me. Before we get into that though, Robbie, what's new?
What's new with me? So it was my birthday last month, and
Happy birthday.
thank you very much. And one of the gifts I got is my new favorite obsession, which is the SodaStream. I've got a bunch of different bottles now and a bunch of different syrups. You know, the fancy elderflower ones that you get. I've got loads of those around the house as well.
Very posh.
But I know. But yeah, I'm obsessed with carbonated water now. So that is my what's new with me.
So when SodaStreams were first around when I was young, because they're quite retro, aren't they? But then they've been brought back. They were always very interesting, but the syrups at the time, I don't think you'd have got elderflower. It was kind of like Coca-Cola, some sort of Dr. Pepper-like rip-off. So
All the
modern day roller cola, yeah, modern SodaStreams sound like they've gone a bit upmarket.
Yeah.
What made you? Did you ask for it? Did you?
I did actually ask for it. Yeah, I've wanted one for ages. Because I'm trying to be healthier. I drink water a lot, but water gets a bit boring. So this is spicing up my water life, basically, just by having carbonated water. To be honest, I rarely actually put in the syrups or anything. I just quite like carbonated water by itself. But yeah, I'm like you, actually. I used to have, or rather my father did, when I was a kid, have a machine that was like a retro one. I think it was even old for him. And I remember having it all the time, and I really liked it. I used to just put like Robinsons in, or nothing fancy like roller cola or anything like that. But yeah, I remember using that quite a lot as a kid, and I quite fancied one again. Have you seen the size of the canisters you get now? It's ridiculous. They're huge.
All I've ever seen with SodaStreams when it comes to online content is the disasters when someone over pumps.
Oh yeah,
and then they take the bottle out and it just goes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Luckily, I haven't done that yet.
Have you done that yet?
No, okay, but I like it really, really fizzy. So I'm pretty sure I've come close a couple of times.
You're a man of danger, Robbie.
Absolutely. Live life on the edge.
Walking the line.
All right, then. What's new with you?
So new with me, for those watching, but for those who aren't, I'll describe it. Blocks my audio. Is this? It's a mechanical keyboard. So I recently decided to upgrade my desk setup a little bit. I have long thought my keyboard was just average. It wasn't expensive. It was practical. And to be honest, it was inspired by a walk around Curry's with my daughter, and she was kind of, as kids do, touching everything. And she started tapping these mechanical keyboards, and I had a little tap on them, and I was like, oh, that's quite satisfying, actually. I quite like that. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, my keyboard is a bit crap. I do spend a lot of time typing emails, Word documents, all the good stuff. I'm also very, very early in my journey to start dabbling a little bit more with coding and learning some Python. So I thought, well, hey, a nice keyboard would make that sort of activity more enjoyable. So I did a bit of research. You can spend a lot of money on mechanical keyboards. Yeah. I did not realise the rabbit hole that this was going to take me down. I settled on the Keychron K10. It's a full-size mechanical keyboard. I went for the aluminium chassis. I think it's just over £100. So, depends on your viewers whether that's a lot or not. Some people would think that's an horrendous amount of money for a keyboard. Others would understand that was quite reasonable.
For a mechanical keyboard, I think that's kind of, pretty good.
And I went for their kind of top-end one. I went for full size. I wanted the number pad. I know you can get the 10 keyless ones. They look nicer, but I think I'll need the number pad. I love a number
pad. I can't live without it.
Exactly. It's got the good old RGB lights. It's wireless, but critically for me, it is Bluetooth and can connect to multiple devices, which is a bit of a showstopper for me because my desk supports essentially 3 different computers, so it needs to be able to hot swap between them. So yeah, this is what I've bought. I am about a week into it, thoroughly enjoying it. It's so much more fun to type on. Super conscious about how loud it is, but apparently no one on my Teams calls can hear it. So
I was going to ask you because that's the main thing with these mechanical keyboards is which switches did you go for?
Well, and I thought you might ask me this, and I didn't prepare to answer it properly. I went for their so Keychron. Yeah, I think mine are. I think I went for red.
Oh, MX Reds. Yeah, they're usually the good ones.
So the Keychron, they had 3 different. Did I go for red or did I go for brown? They had 3 different levels, and basically I went for the mid level. I didn't want too clicky.
Yeah.
Too loud. I also didn't want it to be too soft. I kind of wanted the tappy sound as part of that kind of. I'm
trying to remember what browns do. They're right. You're right. They're in the middle, aren't they?
Yeah, I think I went brown. Thinking about it, Keychron offer it in blue, brown, or red. I think blue were the super clicky ones.
Super clicky, yeah.
Red, I think, were the more muted, and brown was somewhere in the middle. So I've gone for the one in the middle. Mine is all hot swappable. I can change it, upgrade it in the future, but I don't know that I'll need to for what I need. This is good. It does the job, and I really like it. But who knows?
Tactile, that's what they're called. Tactile, non-clicky, the brown ones.
They definitely are clicky, so maybe I didn't go brown then.
Well, no, I think it's clicky in the sense that you can feel a bump when you press it, and maybe even hear a bit of a bump, but not as loud as the super clicky ones.
Oh, yeah, it's not. It was in the middle. They advertised 3 different levels. So
yeah.
So there you go. That was what I went for. I don't know much about the brand. I did read a little bit about them. They were a Kickstarter, I think, originally.
Yes, yeah. I think I've heard of Keychron. They're quite popular at the moment.
Yeah, I've seen a number of sort of YouTubers and content creators with these custom keyboards, and had a little look around to try and find the right one. I didn't want a kind of a Razer or a gaming keyboard or something like that. That wasn't what I was after. This was more for productivity. Nice. I definitely feel like I'm a faster, more accurate typer on it, and I like the experience of using it. I just think I'm going to hate going back to standard office keyboards when I have to use them. But
Funny you say that though, because so I got a mechanical keyboard a while ago. It's a Logitech one, but it's the Logitech kind of low profile one. I have to try and find out the make of it. Yeah. The G915 wireless tactile one.
I did look at that one, and that was the other front runner for me. It was just that it was a little bit more expensive, and I was trying to avoid black. Don't know why. Just didn't. I'd seen these. I know my keyboard's shades of grey, so not 50 shades. But I just didn't. I don't do black anything really. I mean, I'm wearing black headphones. I hate them, but they're practical. I don't really like black, so I saw the grey. That went with my desk. I've got like a natural wood look desk. I wanted something that kind of fit in with the look as feel. So there was an aesthetic decision as well as the practical decision.
With keyboards.
But yeah, I'm really happy with it. Really happy with it.
It's funny you say that you're enjoying it though, because I think I've had this for a while now. I definitely think I'm slower typing on this than perhaps the super lower profile, like almost laptop keyboard style ones. I'm much faster typing on.
I guess I'm comparing this to sort of what I would class as like mid-range normal keyboard. Yeah. So I would agree, like on a MacBook or an Apple keyboard, I was pretty fast as well. It's more those sort of cheaper membrane keyboards. I can definitely tell there's more confidence in the clicks. Yeah, that's it. There's more confidence in the clicks. So, but anyway, don't want to spend too long talking about keyboards because it's not the most exciting topic. But
definitely a rabbit hole.
I was really pleased with it. It's definitely a rabbit hole. I couldn't believe it. But anyway. And of course, all my YouTube suggestions now are full of bloody keyboard review videos.
There's no shortage of those videos online as well.
I watched 2 or 3 to get a feel for what I wanted, and now I'm swamped with them. So I wish there was a way to tell YouTube or Amazon or any of these platforms, I bought one, stop showing me now.
Just search for loads
of
other
things. I don't need
things.
this anymore. Yeah, don't show me this anymore. Anyway, let's get into the topic of this episode. And as I said at the top, it's about action cameras, basically. Or on-the-go filming and content creation. So vlogging, if you like, not sophisticated movie making, just to be super clear. And I recently had the opportunity to go to Florida for work. And while I was there, I had a couple of down days and I went around the Disney parks, which was great fun. And my family were very jealous of this and they wanted to experience it. So I said I would take my camera equipment and I would do them a vlog, which I will say was a bit uncomfortable I got comfortable with it in the end, but it was a bit weird talking to a camera and walking around an open place full of people.
You're in the States, though. I feel like if ever there was a place to do it,
it was quite. There were people definitely doing it in the parks, but it didn't stop me as a conservative Brit from being a little bit, self-conscious. But it was also an opportunity for me to take my most recent action cam purchase, as I've bought a few over the years, which was the Insta360 Go3. It's new-ish, as I said at the top. It's not brand new. It's not kind of cutting edge. I'm not the first person to receive one of these. But it's probably new, I think, within 6 to 12 months.
Definitely this year.
So it's this year. And I'd never come across it before. It's in its third iteration, as the name suggests, but it's seen some quite rapid changes in its form factor and its evolution. But I have to say, super, super impressed with it. So, spoiler alert, if you want to know what my thoughts are, I'm going to tell you now. I loved it. It was really impressive. For those watching on YouTube, Robbie's got the website up now and just kind of showing you some of the perspectives. I'll also show you throughout the video to camera some of the components as I talk about it, but I'll try not to make it too video heavy. So basically, let's break down this camera first of all. The Insta360 Go, it's a miniature, tiny camera, 35 grams in weight. It's probably the smallest action camera that I've come across. And the beauty of it is that it is incredibly tiny and relatively discreet. It comes with a whole host of attachments, which we'll talk about. And in itself, it gets about 45 minutes battery life, which, you might say, well, that's not great, but for an action camera, it's pretty reasonable. But it also comes with, and I think what sets this apart, is what they call the action pod, which is a dock essentially for the camera, which makes it look more like your traditional GoPros or the form factor you might expect from a common action camera. The main body of the camera itself docks into the action pod, and the action pod extends the battery life to 170 minutes. The action pod also comes with a screen on the back which flips up, so you can not only view what you're shooting, you can use it for selfie videos, which I did. It also acts as a separate Bluetooth display to show you what's on the camera when it's not docked. So it's a really versatile piece of kit. It's all connected to the various attachments using magnets, so it's very convenient but also very strong. So, you can pop it out very easily, but there's a very sturdy grip. You don't worry about it moving around or coming out by accident. And unlike a lot of camera companies these days, they actually bundle a whole load of accessories with it, which I think they should be praised for, because it gives you so much. All of the attachments, all the accessories I'll talk about came in the box. I've got some others which I wasn't going to discuss, which I've kind of bought for other action cameras and are interchangeable. But all of the accessories that I'll discuss during the episode today, all of them come in the box, which I think is incredible. And honestly was a selling point for me. So, as I said, 35 grams in weight, pretty good battery life, and extended when it's in the case. In terms of waterproof, all action cams have to have an element of that these days. The camera itself, fully waterproof. The action pod is water resistant, so you can splash it, you can accidentally get it wet, but don't submerge it. In terms of storage, so I bought the base 32 gig model. They do bigger ones, and its price is around the £400 mark, depending on where you buy it from. But I found 32 gig to be plenty, sufficient for what I was doing. I was kind of downloading my content at the end of the day, starting again afresh the next day, never ran out of space, and I did quite a lot of filming. As I said, it's mounted. You can mount it almost anywhere with these magnets, and I'll sort of talk about how versatile that is. But in terms of the, I guess the only drawback that I would say is that because the memory card can't be removed, the only way to extract your footage is through the Insta360 app, and you'll see this on all reviews of Insta360 cameras. The app's a bit meh. It's okay. It works. Functionally, it works. But it's not the most intuitive, and it also means that the experience is a little bit slow. So when I was having to get the footage off at the end of a day, I had to wirelessly connect to the camera, select all the footage that I wanted, download it from the device to my phone, and then export it from the app to my photo library in order to get it anywhere near the iPad Pro.
Yeah.
So there was a couple of hoops to jump through to get the footage off. But I will say the app's pretty cool because it also has a whole load of editing tools within it for doing clever stuff with your 360 footage, because although this camera's called the Insta360 Go3, it's not 360 at all. I think the company were built around their 360 cameras and now they've diversified. But the app does some really clever stuff, and it's the app mixed with the 2.7K footage quality that the camera shoots in that allows it to do all sorts of fancy stuff like flow state stabilization, which basically takes a lot of the vibration and movement out of very bumpy footage. It also allows you, if you want to choose at the end of shooting how you want to frame your footage. So you get basically almost like a giant sort of circle footage, or in terms of how it shoots, and then you can crop portrait, landscape, etc.
That's clever.
As
you,
a
lot of the software would just decide that for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so you can lock it in on the camera and go, no, I'm just shooting in 16:9 landscape. Don't worry, and then that means that certain features are available to you. If you choose to have the sort of reframe option later, the reframing has to be done in the app. And it means that other certain features aren't available because obviously it's taking up resources and whatever else. But it does mean that you have the flexibility later on to frame exactly how you want to frame for whatever use case you had in mind. So that's the camera at a sort of high level. Really impressive piece of kit. And as I said, I took it to Florida. I took it around the parks. I wasn't doing anything too high octane. Having said that, I did use it to film on some of the more sort of the speedier roller coasters. So, it was put through its paces, but I wasn't, mountain biking or skydiving or, ocean diving. So that was kind of the journey. Any thoughts on the Insta360 Go yourself, Robbie? I know you'd seen it before I purchased it and you liked it. But
yes, I thought it was a really cool device. I really like all of the accessories, and I know you're going to talk about them in a second, but the fact that they come in the box it is really quite cool. I didn't know they all came in the box. I thought they might have been sold separately, but I did see some early reviews when they were first released. I know, for example, Casey Neistat, I think, is quite often sponsored by Insta360. The original Insta360 as well, he has in some of his videos as well. But I remember watching the video that he did on this as well, and I thought it just looks like such a cool camera, and it's absolutely tiny, which I think it's hard to even portray on any of these adverts how small it actually is. But
I mean, I can try to hold it up for the benefits of YouTube. It's smaller than my thumb, comfortably smaller than my thumb. Yeah. It's tiny. It really is tiny. It's
I've seen some gross videos of Casey putting it in his mouth.
Yes, all sorts of weird stuff people were doing with it, and because it's waterproof, I saw one. I think it was Peter McKinnon poured a coffee with it in the bottom of the coffee cup or something daft like that.
I've seen those.
So there's some quite clever things that were done with it. But that's the whole point. I think that's what people have said. That's what tempted me when I saw the reviews, was that people were saying this opens up so many possibilities from a shooting perspective as to where you can take this camera or where you can put it. Now, I didn't use it for anything particularly creative, to be honest. But let me just talk you through some of the accessories so you can see what comes in the box, and then I'll talk to you about how I use them. I'll talk through the ones that I didn't really use in the first instance, and then I'll get onto the ones that I did use. So first of all, there is this very sort of simple looking sticky pad, but it theoretically sticks to anything. So it comes with a little cover that kind of conceals the sticky pad at the bottom. It's got a typical camera thread on the top. You mount the camera using the flexi kind of neck that comes with the device, and you can stick this literally anywhere, theoretically. On a window, on a door, underneath a surface, on top of something. It will go anywhere. And then with the flexible neck, you can kind of point the camera in any direction and get the shot that you're looking for. I didn't use it because I didn't really need it for what I was doing with the camera. It's more for, I guess, fixed shots, perhaps attaching to objects like surfboards or something that might work quite well.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how sticky it is, so don't go and do that.
I was going to say
your own.
That sounds dangerous.
But that was one of the options.
I saw, for example, actually in some of the trailers here that if you're doing like any cooking vlogs or anything, you could pitch it up against a cupboard or something and then look down at the chopping board as you chop it and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's good for creating those kind of angles. The other one that I didn't use, but I thought I might have done, but I honestly didn't end up wearing the hat or anything, is that this particular device here. So this is designed to cradle just the camera, but it's got a small clip on that will mount onto things like the peak of a cap.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you put it on the cap, and then you've kind of got a camera view of whatever you can see.
Very cool.
Again, very functional, all in the box. I didn't need that one. What I did use was this one. So this is the magnetic, basically the basic sort of camera mount you might expect to see on any kind of camera, with a flexible neck that allows you to capture any angle that you want to capture. But the beauty of this is that it's magnetic, and it has these two little clips as well. So it locks in really confidently. You can hear that click coming through the audio there, and then it's in, and the clips hold it in. So you can release it and pull it away, but it pulls back into place every time. That exact same magnet, though, then works on the bottom of the camera. So you get exactly the same satisfying click, whether you want the camera in or out of the action pod. And then that would be attached to anything with a normal standard camera thread. So again, really, really useful. That one I used a lot. I must be honest, I predominantly used it for selfie shooting. So I'd put the action camera in the action pod and I would flip the screen up and then I just walked along, had it in hand. And because that's enough for me to pinch, it's all I needed. And it was doing the stabilization for me. You know, you could have had it on a tripod, you could have had it on a selfie stick, you could have had it on a kind of grip. I had those things with me, but I just didn't need them. And by keeping it this small, I could put the whole thing in the pocket and it was just there. Very convenient. So I liked that.
So pocketable.
Yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it?
And then the one that really did it for me, the one that changed the game in terms of how I use this versus other cameras, was I'm going to call it a necklace. I'm not sure that's the name. But basically, you get this magnetic disc on a thread, which can be extended, so that kind of unravels. And the camera just locks onto it very confidently through your clothes. So the idea is you'd have that under your clothes, and then you just click this through the t-shirt fabric or whatever you've got on, and it locks onto the necklace. And the beauty of that was that I could just walk around with that on my chest, turn it on and off with a simple button press to start recording, and capture footage of me walking, talk while I'm doing it. I did lots of sort of sped up footage during the trip of me moving around the park, and that was just all done wearing it on my neck. But also, where this came in really helpful was on rides where I wasn't supposed to record. Don't tell anyone.
I was wondering about that.
There were a few rides where they didn't want you to record, partly because you probably should have your hands on the roller coaster and not be fanning around with the camera.
True.
But also probably because they don't want footage of the rides getting out or whatever it was. So, slap my wrists. But I did ride a couple of the new roller coasters. So I rode Tron. That's in the video footage somewhere. And for those watching on YouTube, I've got the... so for those watching on YouTube, I'll put one of the vlog videos, kind of picture in picture, on the YouTube video, so you can see some of the footage that came from the camera. But I did manage to shoot the Tron video, and that was one of my favourites. However, there was one more accessory required to make that particular shot possible, and that was this little thing, this innocuous little wedge. So this actually goes on the back of the necklace, and it acts as a shim. So it can either push the camera that way or push the camera that way. Now, Tron, for those who haven't seen the Tron ride at Disney World in Magic Kingdom, it's meant to replicate riding the Tron cycles or the light cycles. So you are sort of stumped over in a kind of, I would say, racing kind of motorbike position. You're leaning forward, which meant that with this dangling on my chest, it was just going to see a whole load of whatever my chest was pointing at on the floor. So I had to put this little shim underneath the disc to point the camera slightly up, so that when I was leaning forward, it compensated for my lean, and therefore still enabled me to get the angle that I was after. And I said that is all the accessories that were in the box. There are some others that they sell, but frankly, to get that many different options in the box with the flexibility they provide, I just thought it was incredible.
Really cool. You know what I was also surprised at as well, because I did watch the second of your vlogs, which was the one with the Tron ride as well. Is the quality actually surprised me quite a bit. I thought you were using a much higher end camera, because when you see action camera footage, I'm thinking maybe like old GoPros where it was limited to like 720p. And it was quite a little bit shaky, although they tried to compensate that quite a bit. But yeah, I was really surprised with the quality of this. And I also have to give you props for the vlog itself, because the edit is fantastic, and I really love the sped up videos with it on your chest. It's such a unassuming thing to do, like walking around, and you pretend it's not there. That's why you're getting on all the rides, which is quite cool. But also, it just works so seamlessly in the video. And actually, I don't know if you noticed on some of the clips, maybe you can put these in the edit, you actually see some of your hands like swaying as you're walking. You come into the shot, so it's like a proper action cam on your chest. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'll talk a bit about what I used to make those videos shortly, because it wasn't just the Insta360 Go, although the bulk of the footage that you've seen was from that camera. It was funny because some people didn't notice, some people paid no attention, and I was under the illusion that this thing was barely visible until I caught a reflection of myself, in the toilets or something. And I must admit, after I went to the toilet the first time with the camera on, and then I clocked it in the mirror, I thought, ooh, probably shouldn't take that into a toilet. That's going to look weird. So I got really conscious whenever I went to the toilet that I must take the camera off because I don't want people thinking I'm recording them while they're having a wee. But it was really funny because when I got it on, most people, like I said, weren't batting an eyelid, but others would glance it, and you get that kind of someone just sort of tracks you as they walk past you. What's this guy doing?
You see the odd one, I think, on the video as well of people like you can see when they clock it and like look away.
I did get one guy who, one of the staff there, who actively talked to me about it. It's like, oh, is that a camera? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, oh, that's really cool. And we did a little fist bump, and we're on our way. No one had any problem with it. No one said anything to me. No one took any issue with it. I think what people found most confusing was that it isn't like what the cameras most people have seen. Most people are used to GoPros and devices of that kind of form factor. This is quite different. It is something kind of much smaller. It's obvious, I think, that it's a camera, and it does flash red when it's recording. So there's no like trying to deceive people, which I think is absolutely as it should be.
But I think especially with it on your chest as well, it's so unassuming compared to, I don't know if you've probably got them as well, because I know you were into GoPros back in the day as well. But like the massive chest strap things that typically go when you've got it on your chest, that's the most obvious thing and the ugliest thing, I think, for like vlogging and things like that. So the fact that it's so unassuming probably caught people off guard.
I completely agree, and I think that's the thing, is just free floating. So people are like, "What's that?" Just randomly floating on that guy's chest. I do have a history with kind of action cameras, so I still got my original GoPro, the very first GoPro. So it was fascinating when they came out. I don't use it, obviously, these days. I still have a GoPro Hero 4, which I think was the fourth edition, but it was the first totally waterproof, no case required action cam.
Yeah.
Still use that. It's 1080p, quality's perfectly fine outside, natural light.
What are they up to now? Is it the Hero 8 or Hero 9 or something?
No, I think it's gone beyond that, hasn't it now?
I'll do a quick Google
check. Is it not 11 or 12? I'm not sure. It's got to be, because I'm sure I've had that camera for years. And
it's Hero 11,
iterations. I was going to say, I thought they were into double digits.
Oh, pre-order the Hero 12 now.
Yeah, there we go. So I've got that GoPro. I also have, which I'll talk about in a minute, another Insta360 camera. I've got an Osmo little pocket cam with a gimbal head. That's quite cool. I've bought things like drones in the past. So I have a habit of buying these things and then not really using them very much. It's the novelty value. I play with them for a bit and go, that was cool. I don't really have a proper use for that. And then they end up in a box. But I'm pleased to say already this action camera has been used more probably than most of those cameras that I've just talked about. And it will continue to get used because it's a really, really versatile. What I took with me, though, so you talked about the vlog, and obviously that's running for those watching on YouTube. I did take some other cameras with me. So I also had with me the Insta360 One X2, which is this little one. Had this for a couple of years now. Really good, true 360 camera. So for those watching, you can see it, but for those not, I will describe it. So it's, I don't know, how would you describe that form factor? It's probably slightly bigger than an NES controller, which really dates me.
I was going to say not a lot of people would.
It's smaller than a
chocolate bar, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a chocolate bar. Smaller than an early iPhone. It's narrower, certainly. It's got a 180 camera on either side, and then the software in the app then stitches that together and makes true 360 footage.
Yeah.
It also does some editing using, I'm going to say it's AI. I don't know that for sure, but I assume it's some sort of AI that then removes the stick or the grip or whatever you're holding it with to try and make it look almost like drone footage.
Cool.
They're really good. I'll be honest, the use cases for them are quite niche in terms of true 360, but you can get some really good footage out of them. And what I like about the 360 camera like this one is that you can shoot footage on it and then almost direct to the footage afterwards.
Yes.
So you just walk around with it and then you can kind of decide, in the edit, where you want the focus to be. So you're then almost deciding where the camera's focusing on after the fact, which is good in case you miss something that's going on behind you or is just out of shot.
And it's not just statically, right? You can move it throughout the shot. So say you've got a minute of footage, you could just move where the actual recording comes out at the end.
It's almost like moving through with as the cameraman after the fact. Yeah, absolutely.
Super clever.
The main use case for this when I was away, and the only reason I used it was on some of the roller coasters, because it's quite good fun to be able to see the person's expression as they're riding it, but also still see what's going on in front of them. And there's a built-in function in the app, really basic. You'll see it again in the edits if you're watching this, where you can do like a split screen. So it will focus on the person's face and then what is polar opposite to them in terms of what they're seeing, which means the roller coasters look quite cool because you're seeing my reaction to it, but you're also able to see, the direction of travel, where the roller coaster's going. Of course, that footage could be remapped and re-edited many different ways, but it's a very simple and quick edit, all done in the app, that creates this kind of split view for you. So that was
really
the other
like those
camera.
clips. I really, really like those clips. I thought they were really clever. And
really
I was thinking of what that use case would be for the double camera, the forward and back. And that is the perfect use case. I can't imagine many other scenarios whether that would come out well, but yeah, that's like the perfect scenario.
I've got some cracking footage at Disneyland Paris with my daughter and one of my friend's daughters. I took them on the Toy Story Paratroopers ride, which basically is you sit in a row of 3, you pull to the top of a pole, and then you drop as if you're on a parachute, and then it kind of shoots you back up, and then you drop, and then shoots you back up. My daughter loves rides. She's hardcore. She's hands free, hands in the air on every roller coaster she can. Nothing scares her. My friend's daughter, not so brave. And in the video footage, she looks absolutely terrified. That look as her face goes from excitement to terror, and then at the end, the relief when she realizes it's over is so funny. And of course, I got all of it on the camera.
Oh, bless her.
It was good. It was really good fun. But so that was the other camera I took with me. And as I say, I exclusively use that for roller coasters where I was allowed to shoot, and where I wasn't, I sneakily used the other one. So this was used for things like Everest, Animal Kingdom. It's a great roller coaster. I used it on what else did I use it on? Mine, I think it was the Runaway Mine Train.
I was going to say the Mine one.
Magic Kingdom. Yeah, the Mine Train. That was a good one. I think as well. Big Thunder Mountain was the other one. So that was that. And then the only other camera, if you can call it that I had with me was my iPhone, and it was the iPhone 12 Pro. I'm eagerly awaiting announcements for the 15 because I'm desperate to upgrade it now. The battery's awful. But I shot with that as well. And the only thing I really used the iPhone for were like a handful of short B-roll clips.
Yeah.
So I don't know how noticeable it was, whether you could tell the difference. I'll be honest, in the video footage, I didn't do any color correcting, any color grading, nothing to try and make these look consistent. I just slapped them in for the speed and to create these videos for my kids. The iPhone was used, as I said, just for a handful of B-rolls. I didn't use it for any of the selfie stuff. I didn't use it for any talking to camera pieces. The nice thing for me with the iPhone is with that bigger display, if I was trying to create a certain sweep or movement or a zoom with that movement, it was just easier to do with that camera, and I could do it in camera and not have to worry about trying to do it in post.
They were really good. I have to say that's the thing for me that made the vlog look way more professional. I think it was the B-roll was so smooth and super sharp as well. I think you expect with some of the movement shots and even the selfie shots to be a little not as sharp, but the B-roll being that kind of high quality, I think really uplifted the entire vlog. I could definitely tell the difference, I think. But it's kind of, I couldn't tell whether it was because it was a slower shot and you weren't moving around as much, rather than it being a different camera. Like I didn't really think that much about it. But yeah, really
there were some shots that I made with the chest cam, and some of them that I made without looking. So it was on my chest, and I wanted to pan up in front of something, so I kind of just arched my back and just twisted the camera with my hands a little bit. But most and the other thing I'll say is there were no other accessories used at all. So no tripods, no gimbals. no stabilizers, nothing. Just all in hand. Which again, I think it comes across. It's not professionally shot. It is a vlog. But
it's amazing that, I mean, if you did that with other tech, even just a few years ago, it would look way more amateur.
Yeah, 100%. And it's dead easy to get a nice panning shot with an iPhone because you just lock your elbows in and just gently move around. Yeah. It's quite easy to do. What had to work for me, and the reason why I took the approach that I did, was that it had to be quick and seamless and just part of my day. I was trying to get 4 parks in 2 days and get on the key rides that I wanted to get on. I didn't have time to mess around setting up shots and doing the walk past shots and then to go back and get the camera. Like, well, whenever you watch a YouTube video or any kind of video for that matter, and you realize how some of these kind of like these simple shots, the things like where someone opens a door and comes into a house and the camera's already in the house.
Yeah.
Well, when you think about it, well, they had to open the door, put the camera down, back, turn it on, back out, open the door, and then do the thing they were doing anyway. So I didn't want to mess around with any of that. I wasn't trying to pretend that I was doing something that I wasn't. It was just very much me trying to capture it as it happened.
The dedication is real.
Yeah, but they genuinely, they make these videos great.
Yeah.
But I didn't have time for that. That's not what I was trying to do. And I just wanted to test the camera out really and give it a thorough testing. And I felt like I got a lot out of that camera in a couple of days. So in terms of shooting, that was kind of my setup. Insta360, the Insta360 One X2. It's got a crap name. They're all crap names, I will say. And then the iPhone 12 Pro. So those were the three cameras that I shot on.
Yeah. One thing I would say is a couple of shots in the videos. I think it must have been the new Insta360 Go one. There was a bit of funny kind of ISO issues, I think. The lighting was a bit funny. It made you look dark even though you're outside. And it was really bright in Florida. But just the odd shot here and there. So that could just be some of the like software inside it. But just the only thing I noticed. That was slightly off.
I mean, both cameras will suffer to a degree because of the size of the glass. Ultimately, the lens is going to restrict how much it can do. It wasn't great indoors, but then to be fair, nor was my iPhone. My wife's iPhone she's got a 14 Pro.
Yes,
I can tell the difference between that shooting in dark compared to mine. Just 2 generations apart. That's moved significantly. No pun intended.
I was going to say generations apart.
But so the low light was challenging, but Florida outdoors, beautifully sunny, hot day, great conditions to shoot in really on any of the cameras. Probably what you will have found in those shots is the sun was probably behind me somewhere, so the camera's trying to adjust for the amount of light coming in behind me, and therefore I look dark and more dark than I should do. But yeah, it was really interesting experience. Like I said, once I got over the nerves, if you like, or the awkwardness, probably more appropriate, of sort of talking to camera. So originally I was trying to find quiet corners and doing my little pieces to camera. By the second day I was like, who cares? I don't know these people. They don't know me.
Yeah,
I'm not
never
saying
see them
anything
again.
weird or rude. I'm just going to say it. And so, I was walking past quite a lot of people around by Tron, giving my impressions for longer than I realised I'd vlogged in anywhere else. And my phone was full of, I would say probably in excess of 100 less than 10-second shots of various bits of footage that I'd captured along the way to try and bring that story to life. And what I was trying to do as I was moving from point to point was just trying to capture just a couple of little bits of the journey between those points, just to connect the conversational pieces together in an interesting way. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. But
I really did.
It was a lot of work, and actually the work wasn't in the capturing the footage. The work came after.
Yes, I was going to say, I mean, the fact that you're able to kind of light touch get such good shots from the equipment they used, as you say, not going so far as doing those prepared shots where it looks like happenstance walking past your camera that's already been laid on the floor, but still having great shots.
Or opening a cupboard that has the camera in it to get something out.
Yeah.
All great shots, by the way. I love all that stuff. But,
I do too, as well.
There's a lot more work goes into that, and I hadn't got time for it. So editing-wise, just because of traveling, I was traveling for work, so I couldn't really afford to take loads of personal stuff. I opted to leave my MacBook at home. My iPad was far more practical, certainly for the flight, for consuming entertainment and stuff like that. And I decided I would force myself to use Final Cut on the iPad, because it's very easy for me just to go, well, I'll get the MacBook. I'm much quicker. I'm much more competent on the full fat desktop app. But I intentionally left the MacBook at home and forced myself to use the iPad just to see how that software worked, to force myself to learn it, and honestly to be able to give you an honest opinion of it on a podcast episode like this, because we talked about it when it was announced, but we've never talked about it since. And honestly, I bought it and downloaded it on the day of release, and I've not used it. So this was the first time I actually sat down and used it properly. I have to say, first impressions were that it was pretty intuitive. I picked it up fairly quickly. I don't know if that's because I'm already a Final Cut user, so I know where things are supposed to be, although not everything is a direct mirror of the Mac version. Or it might just be that its design as a video editing tool is pretty straightforward. If you've used one video editor, maybe this is fairly easy to pick up. But either way, I found it quite easy to do. The videos took time because of the amount of footage that I'd shot and the complexity of getting the footage from my phone, the footage from the two different cameras out of the apps, and then all onto the iPad. There was a bit of faff in getting ready to edit, and then a bit of time put into the actual edit.
Yeah.
I would guess somewhere in the region of 2 to 3 hours per video in total. And that includes getting the footage in, selecting the footage I wanted, trimming the footage, putting it all in order, going through then and putting a handful of basic audio effects on. So I did nothing more than prioritize voice on the voice over ones and drop the volume on the ones that didn't need to be, that were going to have music over them.
Yeah.
And then I used all the built-in music from the app to...
that was built-in music?
All of that audio is from the audio library. I mean, I used most of it, to be honest.
I mean,
so there wasn't a lot that I didn't use. But
that was one thing I was going to say, is the music was great. Like, so a lot of the... Because it's the classic kind of backing tracks to vlogs as well that are in there. It feels like just the perfect type of music. With the exception of when you went to... I think there was something Marvel related, and you had like almost superhero music in the background, which also was quite good.
All of that, and that was by design, by selection by me, but it was all in app.
Yeah.
So all of that is available through Final Cut Pro.
Wow, I didn't realize.
Sorry,
that came
Final
with
Cut. Can't call it Pro. Final Cut. So all of the audio, all the music was straight from the app, which was again done for simplicity, and I felt like they were pretty competent tracks that kind of had the feel and the energy that I wanted for each of the bits of the story as I was kind of telling it. The couple of things that set it apart for me. So as I mentioned earlier, I didn't do any color grading or anything like that, anything sophisticated. I used basic transitions that were in the app. Where I used transitions at all, for the most part, I just did simple cuts. What I did like, which you can't do on the desktop, is where the Apple Pencil comes in. So first of all, the Apple Pencil for just interacting with everything in general. You know, cutting, snipping footage, retiming footage, that was great. What I really liked, though, was the ability just to free draw on your video footage. So there are a handful of times, I think, in the second video. And I did scribble. I didn't take time over it. You could have done something much more kind of fancy and artistic. But if I wanted to call something out in the video or make a comment about something, I just hand wrote it on the screen. And then it animates the appearance, and then you can choose how long it stays for, and it becomes an object in your timeline. I really liked that as well. I thought that was a really nice, neat tool for drawing attention to certain things. So I tried to have a little bit of fun and just incorporate that and test it out. I don't know. What I don't know, I suppose, is how much faster I would have been on my MacBook.
That's what I was going to ask, if you could
guess. And I'll never know. Yeah, I'll never know. I mean, in reality, probably not a lot faster, to be perfectly honest. I was probably slowed down, certainly in the first video, by not necessarily knowing where everything was. So there were certain tools, certain things I knew I should be able to do, like adding keyframes and then changing audio volumes at certain keyframes and changing activity. I know where all that is on a Mac. I could not find it for love nor money initially on the iPad, to the point where I thought, I've looked at everything, maybe it's just not there.
Yeah.
Then I Googled it, and then I was like, oh, why is it under that menu? And then I found it, and then it was easy. So the second time, I think it was a slightly longer and slightly more complicated video, but it took about the same time, if not slightly less, because I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I'd probably be marginally faster on the Mac, but not by much, to be perfectly honest. I don't think it was... I think there's a compromise, isn't there? There's the ability just to drag and drop and pinch and pull with the pen is probably slightly slicker than using a mouse, but then there were other things that, I knew better on shortcut keys, some of which didn't carry over, which I thought was a bit weird.
Oh, so you had the keyboard as well and did shortcuts as well?
Yeah, I had. Some of the keyboard shortcuts that I would use to on Mac didn't work on the iPad. Some did, others didn't. There's one particular one I use regularly, which is B for blade. So when I'm editing on the Mac, if I want to cut a piece of footage in half,
nice.
B for blade just pulls up the blade and you can slice the footage. That is not how it worked on the iPad. There might be a shortcut. I didn't go looking, but it wasn't the one I was used to, which I thought was a bit weird. And so every time I wanted to cut a piece of footage or partition two pieces of footage, I had to go and select the blade tool and then cut it. So it was the same tool, just didn't carry over the shortcut, which I thought was a bit weird.
Interesting. One of the other things actually I'd heard as a kind of a criticism from the of the desktop, the iPad versions of these apps, not just Final Cut but also Logic as well, is that tooltips are not great on there, especially if you're not working without a pencil. So it's really good for people who know the systems on the desktop, because you know what these buttons do already. But for new users that don't know what these buttons do, it can actually be quite difficult to figure out where the buttons are for what you need, and also what they do just generally. I think you can hover over them with the pen, or at least you can in the later versions of the iPad.
My pencil doesn't support that.
You might be able to do it with the mouse though. Can you do it with the mouse?
I don't know. I didn't take my mouse for the iPad, but it may be. And I didn't even think to use the trackpad to try it. I'll be honest, it didn't come up for me. But then, as you said, I know my way around Final Cut on the Mac, so I probably knew what most of the icons meant. I found it pretty intuitive though.
It'd be a good test. You try out Logic, try and do something, and I'll try out Final Cut, because I have no idea with with video editing software, and I don't know how much experience you got with audio editing as well, but
nowhere near enough. I think the challenge is perhaps less though getting your head around the software, but knowing the subject matter. I think it'd be a different story if I said go and use popular music editing tool X, and I'll go and use Premiere Pro or something, because then you try and apply what you know about that discipline to a different tool. Whereas I think picking either of those tools up brand new would probably be quite intimidating if you'd never used it before.
True.
There's a lot to learn in there, and I'm not going to pretend I used all the features. Probably far from it. But I used enough to sort of pull together a fairly competent video. I did intros, I did some of the transitions, as I said, used the annotation tools. Exporting it was seamless. That worked really well. What would be interesting, and I would like to do at some point, and I might do this in the future, is to take one of those two projects and then export it into Final Cut Pro for Mac, for the desktop, because you can do that. There is a way to sort of lift and shift it then, so do partial edits and then move it over and finish the job.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see what goes across, and then how seamless that is. But theoretically, all of it should go, but I've never tried it.
It'd be a good way to, if you really like the use of the pencil, you could do all the edits that you would usually use the pencil for on there, and including the little drawings that you do to turn into objects that could then be professionally edited properly on the desktop version. That's a cool idea. I think actually it's the same with Logic as well. I still need to test it properly, but I'm impressed actually how professional the video was with such a light setup. Imagine people who don't have a MacBook and not access to Final Cut Pro. I think Final Cut, wasn't it like $5.99 a month on the iPad? So if you have an iPad, and a couple of cameras, you don't necessarily need all the cameras that you used for the vlog. Just an iPhone would do it. You can have like a really good vlog, just an iPad and a camera, like a mobile phone camera.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, the iPhone to iPad was the most seamless part of the process.
Of course,
I could have done iCloud syncing and just sat and waited, but the Wi-Fi in the venue wasn't the best. I just did AirDrop. So just went, these are all the videos, AirDrop to the iPad, bump, done. Within a minute or so, they were there and ready to go. I think I would still I don't think I'd want to go just iPhone for what I did. Yeah. If you said to me you can only take one of those three devices and do it again, I'd probably take the Insta360 Go3 and leave the iPhone. Because actually everything I did in the iPhone, I could have done with the Insta360 Go. With the exception of like the pinch pull zoom, within the footage, but I could have achieved it in post. There's stuff that I could not have done without that camera.
Yeah.
Specifically, like you said, riding some of those rides where you've got to hold on, and you can't afford to have a camera waving around or dangling, off your arm or.
It's a lot of trust in the magnets. I have to say that I watched that Tron ride and I was like, is the camera gonna stay on? I don't know how. Did they tell you the speed of that ride? Because he literally just sat on like a motorbike, but it honestly was really fast.
It was comfortably the fastest ride that I rode at Disney. Now, Disney's rides are a little tamer than you might find at Universal or the Busch Gardens or others like it. But it was fast. It was really fast. And when I say they're tamer, they're not like wimpy. There's some really good ones there. But for speed, they tend, they're a bit more friendly to a younger audience. But that Tron ride, it kicked off, and you can hear. I mean, you won't hear it in the video that I'm playing back for this because obviously I've took the audio off. But for you, when you listen to it, Robbie, you'll have heard me talking over it, going, "Oh my god, oh my god," and it's because it just kept going. That first bit, the acceleration, when I thought it would ease up, it didn't, and it just kept getting faster. Now that's only over a handful of seconds. So it wasn't like this was going on for ages, but because of the speed at which you went off, most of these rides kind of shoot you off and then they get you into the mix. This one shot you off and just kept accelerating, and it fires you from the inside of the facility outside first, over where everyone's queuing up and waiting, and then you come back inside, and then you're kind of teleported into the Tron world, and it all gets kind of light show and a bit bonkers in the dark. There was part of me that thought, oh my god, oh the camera, oh my god, But I've got to say, the magnets held up really well. I wasn't being bumped around. It was sort of smooth acceleration.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I'd done a few rides by the time I got to Tron, so I'd learned to trust if I'd gone straight to Tron, I'm not sure I'd have trusted it. And what I had to do was just tuck the camera kind of inside my palm, so that the guys couldn't see it as I was boarding the ride, and then I just sort of subtly clipped it onto my neck, onto my chest piece, and then sort of hit record once the ride started moving.
I like it.
Yeah. Do you know what? Would they have said anything? I don't know. They
so.
Probably don't care. No. But you are told not to record, so I thought, well, I wanted to show the kids, so I did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I said overall, I have to say, I went with a minimal setup. I think it's proof that you can do it. I will say, obviously, an iPad Pro, I get it. It's the higher end of the iPads. These cameras do cost several £100 each. But to your point, you could absolutely do that with an iPhone or any other reasonable smartphone with a semi-decent camera. Because most of them these days shoot 4K, and you don't need 4K for this stuff. 1080p is perfectly passable. Everything I output was 1080p for the purpose of this vlog. I didn't go full 4K or need to try. And editing-wise, yes, Final Cut only works on an iPad, but there's other apps out there that'll do this on tablet. LumaFusion is one to look for if you want to just pay outright for the app and not have to worry about monthly fees. I think it's £30 for the app, and then it's done.
That's even more of a commitment, I would argue, though, because say you just sign up for 1 month because you're just going to be editing that month. That's only going to cost you, what,
$5 or $6?
I mean,
you can flex that plan. Yeah, you can flex that plan. You're right. But then I think if you're just going to do one video, you probably just get iMovie, to be honest, and that's free with an iPad. It comes bundled. So again, there's degrees to which you can do this. There was nothing in that vlog that was overly sophisticated from an editing point of view in terms of tools or software. It was purely, like you said, things like the B-roll made it. None of that is technically hard. It's just having the thought when you're out making the film as to how you want to tell your story. I'm far from an expert. I'm an enthusiast, and I watch a lot of videos and often find myself breaking them down as to how they're shot and how they've been put together. If you spend enough time doing that, and then you make a note of some of those ideas that you've got, you can do some really clever stuff. I mean, there are people way more talented than me making content for YouTube that do some really sophisticated stuff with very little in terms of equipment.
The other thing I was going to say, actually, is you mentioned that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but can you get the Final Cut on other iPads, not just the iPad Pro? Or does it only come to the iPads Pro?
It's just the iPad Pro at the moment.
Well, I mean, the other apps, so like LumaFusion and others, for example, could be done on like an iPad Air.
LumaFusion, I think, does run on more than just an iPad Pro.
Yeah.
There are some hardware restrictions as to what it needs. It does need a more recent iPad, I think, but I don't think it's restricted to Pro. And of course, iMovie's on all of them. So,
yeah.
You want to take it down another level, you can do that. So there's options for all levels, really. But as I said, this was about road testing the Insta360 Go3, which I just honestly can't recommend enough. If you're a serious filmmaker, then I don't know, maybe there's some drawbacks. Maybe not, though. You could probably get some really interesting shots that you might struggle to achieve with anything else.
I think that's the point, isn't it? It's and Casey Neistat said this in his video as well. It's just another camera to add to his toolkit to get those shots that you might not otherwise be able to do with any of your other cameras.
Well, that's it. If you think about how many places you can put something this small, in terms of the camera, you're not going to get any high-end cameras into a space that this can get into. Like I said, dropping that into the bottom of a mug,
Yeah.
Well, good luck getting that shot without really creative technology and having to just pull apart a mug, etc. So yeah, I think if it's part of your arsenal, it's great. I think it's more than competent enough to stand on its own. So I think you could use it for an entire vlog. I could comfortably have got every shot on that, with the exception of the full 360 one, which appreciate needs special tech.
Yeah.
But for what that costs, for £400, if you're looking for an action camera to supplement your vlogging equipment, or just want to get started with something, you could spend a lot more for a mirrorless DSLR and have something bulkier, less flexible. Yeah, you're going to get a nice bokeh effect or whatever, but I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for something like that, especially if all you want to do is get into vlogging, or even just, to be honest, forget the vlog stuff. Just want to capture family memories. I'm going to take this. So I'm going back to Disney next year. We're taking the family, and this will be used for a lot because I will be able to capture all sorts of fantastic family memories with this.
Yeah.
Whether that's fun in the pool, rides, walking around Disney. I can just clip it to my waist and I can capture the kids walking around and marveling at Mickey Mouse, and that stuff you can't put a price on. And as I said, there's a common phrase in sort of photography and videography, which is the best camera is the one you have with you.
Yeah.
And I've got expensive camera equipment that I simply don't use because it's too bulky, it's too cumbersome. I've got all the lenses, all that jazz. I did all of that 15 years ago. Still got a lot of that kit now, and it never gets used because it's just not convenient. Whereas your phone, it's always in your pocket. Something like this can be always in your bag, in your pocket. You're going to use something that is there and accessible and easy to do, and it's not cumbersome. So maybe you have the fancy camera, but you're probably not getting this out more because it's just convenience at the end of the day.
Excellent, yeah.
So I think that's all we really wanted to say about it. So sorry, it's been a bit of a J-heavy episode instead of talking, in terms of talking. But I hope you found it interesting. If you've got one of these cameras or an alternative, I did look at GoPro before I bought the Insta360 Go. What do you use? What do you like? What do you think of this camera if you've got it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave those in the comments. Or alternative recommendations for kind of on-the-go content creation, because these are just a handful of tools that we've talked about. I'm sure there are loads of other great ones out there. What do non-Apple users use? I know I get a lot of stick for being an Apple fanboy, and I am. But there's loads of great tech out there for non-Apple users too. So what are you using? But otherwise, I think we'll wrap this episode of Generations Apart. Please do like and subscribe on YouTube, as it really does help us out. We also play a variety of games, not very frequently, but we do play a variety of games, typically on Sunday nights, which we do live on YouTube. So if you have the notification bell on, you won't miss a stream. As I said, we haven't been around much lately, but now the holiday season's over, we're going to try and get back into a bit of a routine. And you might also get a few bonus streams out of the blue midweek, here or there. If you prefer the audio only, then of course you can get the show on all good podcast services. Consider subscribing, leave a review, and tell others if you think they'd like what we do. But thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.